Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to BiblioTech on Air, BiblioTech's official podcast. I'm Rosanna.
I'm Lewis.
I'm Israel.
And I'm Ruby.
And today we'll be talking about The Beauty by Jeremy Haun, available on cloudLibrary with your BiblioTech library card. And we'll also be discussing The Beauty on FX, directed and written by Ryan Murphy.
Various directors.
So with that, quick summary for y'all. Alrighty, so The Beauty, written by Jeremy Haun. The Beauty takes place in a culture increasingly obsessed with physical beauty, asking the question, what if you could be guaranteed a shortcut to becoming beautiful? A sexually transmitted disease has started transforming people who catch it, changing their facial features and body types to something more in line with society's perceived ideal. The only catch? You will have a slight persistent fever, but who cares how you feel when you look so good? Those who pursue this alleged perfection are in for a rude awakening. After an indeterminate amount of time with the disease, it has deadly consequences, as that fever finally burns you from the inside out. For detectives Vaughn and Foster, investigating the first mysterious deaths of beauty victims leads them into a dark world they never expected, full of corrupt politicians, murderous federal agents, and a secret society of crooks and killers.
Yeah, so let's get right into it. So let's start with the premise. So the idea of The Beauty is that it's a sexually transmitted disease that make people physically beautiful. What was your first reaction to that concept?
Very interesting. It's very fitting for today's society, you know. As much as people try to promote body positivity, you know, love yourself, it's still something that's very prevalent where it's like, you know, Ozempic culture, you know, filler culture, dieting culture, all of that. So I think it's very applicable to today.
Yeah. And especially back when it was written, because this was a 2015, or at least it started coming out in 2015. I feel like there was even less, I feel like, push for body positivity back then, or like there was like some stuff, but it was kind of in its infancy, or it was being like made fun of a lot. And I think that knowing when this was written gives a lot of context to why like this felt like a like kind of a pressing issue that they felt the need to like make a commentary on. And it was also around the time that there was kind of like a lot of like zombie stuff and like like that kind of like deadly pandemic sort of things, or like mutation sort of thing. Like it feels like very much like the combination of those two like affinities of a lot of media around that time.
Yeah. I don't know if we're ever going to get rid of like this kind of culture. I feel like there's always something there's always something new. Yeah. It's like this kind of seems not far-fetched for something that could potentially happen in the future.
100%.
Because like you see it now with Ozempic, like that's for diabetes specifically, there's a lot of side effects, but people still take it specifically just for the weight loss. Yeah. So it's something that's going to stay around, unfortunately, probably forever.
Yeah, it's such an interesting concept, like that it's an STD.
Yeah.
Right? Because with the show coming out, Jeremy and his co-writers, through Ignition Press, which I think he owns actually, the publishing company, they're releasing comics. So right now there's 4 issues that are out of like the new wave of The Beauty. I haven't read them. I have them. I'm excited to read them. But reading the synopsis, I was like, oh, damn, this is a really interesting idea.
Yeah.
I love this concept. You know, it's not something that I've heard of before. But yeah, so the idea of people willingly wanting to contract the beauty, right? It's very prevalent in the show. It's prevalent in the book, in the comic book. I don't know, kind of. What do y'all think about that? Do you think that's something people like actually might do?
Oh, absolutely. It doesn't seem super far-fetched. I mean, this might sound terrible, but the illusion of like STD, you know, that sounds kind of like almost like it makes me think of like teens when they have like pregnancy parties or like, you know, I know that's terrible. Or
I
like,
just learned a new thing. Oh no.
Yeah, me too.
That was, I don't know if it's still a thing, but that was like kind of back in the day.
Oh.
Weird. But also kind of like baby trapping, or also you know,
I see.
The also like willingly, like, you know, kind of that vengeful infecting people with an STD kind of stuff like that. Like that's already not something out of left lane.
Yeah.
So
It's kind of interesting, Rosanna, because you're mentioning like these things that actually happen, and it kind of reminds it on the alternate, like, real world aspect is with HIV, like AIDS and stuff like that.
Exactly.
There's individuals who like don't disclose that, and then people do have AIDS for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
Right? And their lives are changed, and now we're introduced to this where people are having parties like we see in the show, in the comic book as well. I believe Foster's wife gives it to him, which was kind of an interesting point for me, because like, did she cheat on him or something?
We never got clarity on that.
And he never reacts to it either, really.
They have like a fight, but then afterwards they're like, let's make up, this is fine.
And then she like moves out, and then she just like straight up moves out.
It's not like super clear whether or not like their ensuing fight was specifically just because he was given the beauty, or if it was that in addition to like, okay, and then how did you get it in the first place? Like, it's not super clear why like what the content of the fight is, but either way they find a way to come back together, and I'm like,
cool.
Good for y'all, but I could not. Yeah,
because in the comic book, it's not through injection, right? That's not an option. Like, it's strictly just an STD.
Yes. Yeah. It's sexually transmitted. What about you, Ruby? Do you think that's unrealistic?
Like I said, I think it's pretty realistic. Like, a lot of when we got into like with the show, the scene with the family and how the daughter was like, "You don't understand. Like, I need this, whatever." And the parent, but she was like, "You take Ozempic, Dad." And he's well, I don't know. I was borderline, like about to be diabetic or something like that, So it's very real. I can see it.
Yeah, I think that over the course of the show, it's a little bit, and we'll get into it, but like it's explored a bit better how like how many different reasons there could be for someone to like do this to themselves, but I think in the actual comic itself, it kind of feels like something that's like, oh, it accidentally happened to a few people, and then like a lot of people wanted it, but it doesn't feel as like, at least in terms of like how it feels in the scope of the thing, compared to the show, it feels like something that's like not like completely out of control everywhere yet. Or if it is, like, it's, people are blending in. A lot of people aren't like advertising it. It just feels like something that is happening to people, you know?
I definitely...
or no, there was an influencer.
I was going to say, there's an influencer where she was an advocate for the beauty.
Yeah.
And then you do have the anti-beauty protesters as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's get into the story. So the story starts with two detectives, Foster and Vaughn, right? Let me see. Did you find their investigation compelling as the story unfolds?
Their investigation went nowhere.
They're kind of just traveling from like
honestly,
country to country.
They just kind of got lucky.
Yeah, a lot of things just kind of happened to them to like lead them in the right direction. And I get like if they're like two detectives like on the case, people would be interested in like where they're going with stuff like that. But it did feel very like, oh, are these the only two people in the entire world? And I felt this with the show too. It's like, are these the only two people in the entire world who are like following up these investigations? Why is all the attention on these two people? And I just also like, I could go more into it. I'm just gonna keep it brief. I thought the first part was boring as tar, even though so much objectively happens. But like the way that it's
the first arc.
Yeah,
the six issues, I believe.
It feels so like exposition dump. It feels like it expects me to care about the fate of these characters, even though it hasn't given me any time to hear them talk about anything but here are the mechanics of this world. Like it really, really fell short for me.
One thing I do like, so it's a unit in the FBI that's dedicated to crimes committed against people who have the beauty. I like the way they introduced that the people are dying from the beauty now, like burning from the inside out. That was just amazing. That was probably one of my favorite visuals from the comic book. It is different in the show, and I prefer the burning in the inside.
It does make more sense, but for body horror, I mean, they have to
which is super popular right now. Body horror.
Yeah, I think it's cooler in the comic that they do burn from the inside out, because it feels like like, oh, it feels more like it's a bit on the nose, but a bit more symbolic of like, yeah, but the pretty outside still remains, but it completely destroyed you from the inside out. So like, was it worth it that you left a pretty corpse? Like, I like that a lot. It's a really cool visual, like the kind of like scorched, like the soot on the outside of the mouth and the like burned out eyes. I think it's cooler. I think the show having them explode is really silly, and it can't convince me otherwise. Like,
Same.
They explain why someone would explode, but like it's just too silly.
Yeah.
It's too silly to me.
Like, it felt like there was a buildup at least. Like, you know, you have that persistent low grade fever, and it's like, oh, what could this possibly tie into? Oh dear God, Emily.
Water, I need water.
Yeah. Like, that part is really cool.
Yeah.
I like that,
Makes
but
sense.
I think it would be cool if they just kind of like they had this whole frenzy and then they just kind of like wither from the inside.
Yeah.
You know? But either way.
It is fun to see it happen to like different people, because you see it happen to like, you know, that person on the subway, and then we see it happen to like the newscaster on live TV, which I thought was like really sells the impact of like, this is the consequence of this disease that y'all are going. Meanwhile in the show it's kind of like, and we'll get into that, the first scene we see is like the runway, and then it's just kind of like, well,
kablammy.
kablow.
But later in the comic book, because this book 1, volume 1, it has 11 issues, right? So the first 6 issues focus on these FBI agents. You know, they're trying to undercover like Calaveras, which is another character that we find in the book,
and did not get any exposition on.
Yes, Louis, go for it.
Okay, I'm sorry. So, okay, and again, we will get into the show portion, because there is like a parallel character to this guy, in my opinion. There is a guy named Calaveras, who is this, like, in the comic, you could tell they're like, oh, he's kind of campy, he's a little, like,
he's a little flamboyant.
He's a little flamboyant, but he's also, like, a ruthless killer who does, like, terrible things. But, like, you know, it felt like, oh, okay, this could be a really interesting villain, or, like, oh, like, this could be... And then just kind of he dies by getting, like, doesn't he die by like getting like hit in the head?
She
or
bashes
something?
his head in with like an oxygen
it
tank.
just feels like he died really quickly, and it feels like the comic was like, oh my God, Calaveras, this guy that we know who he is. Look at him with his flamboyant personality. Oh, he's dead.
Well, I felt like was his character supposed to be Anthony Ramos in the show?
Yeah, I think at least if they were
know.
trying to do parallel characters.
That's what I assume.
Same.
Yeah, like they have a very similar thing. He has the whole thing where he's like taking people and like
skinning them
and like carving them up. That's also what Anthony Ramos's character does in the show. I think it's like at least a parallel, the same way that the 2 detectives and the female one already having the beauty or catching the beauty is like a parallel with the comic.
That's definitely one thing I liked about Calaveras, is how gruesome he was.
Oh yeah, he did
Especially,
not care.
it reminded me of Hannibal from NBC, on NBC, where Dr. Lecter Hannibal, he would like just kill his victims and display them like in almost like art pieces and things like that. And
like
there was
the Dollar Tree version of Hannibal.
definitely the Hispanic version of Hannibal. You know?
Hannibal. Calaveras, Hannibal.
Well, they kind of touch on that in the show too. I don't know. We don't know who it is though, right? That group who is going in and like gutting the corpses.
With the Egyptian.
Yeah, and then puts that symbol, the beauty symbol.
I have that was one note that I had. We can get in later, because I kind of want to shift over in the comic book. So after the first 6 issues, it kind of gives us like short stories, right?
Well,
and that was one thing that I saw in an interview with Jeremy, that he said it was in the comic book. So it was the interview within the comic book, like after the 6th issue, saying, you know, we want to take this in a direction where we explore the world of the beauty.
Like before the beauty.
Yes, before the beauty
is
in
popularized.
the beginning of the beauty, you know, how it impacted different characters within the world. What did you think about those stories, expanding the world? Were there any stories that stood out to you?
Definitely Ezra's story. I thought that was probably the best part of the comic. It really humanized really humanized her character. It gave us context. It gave us a backstory. Granted, we still didn't quite really learn about the beauty itself and how it came to be, but we do at least kind of see that, you know, impact of how it can work favorably for people. Because Ezra, she's a trans character, you know, and she has she goes through all the procedures.
Mm-hmm.
She then gets the beauty, and we see that it just kind of makes her prettier, a bit more feminized. It doesn't have the biggest effect, but then as a contrast, we see her friend Timo, and he's a heavyset, dark-skinned Hispanic male, and he goes on like a massacre rampage, and then he's like, okay, I'm gonna assume I'm gonna become the most unassuming person. He takes the beauty and becomes a white guy.
Yeah, like, and it's not even it's not even talked about really, where it's like, oh, like anybody points out like, wait a minute, why are you white now? At no point does anyone say this. So like, we're kind of left to be like, did the comic writers just kind of do that, and like it was something that didn't get across, or did they meant to write about it, or like was it supposed to be something that like we kind of like fill in the blanks of like why that would have happened to him, because it doesn't happen to other characters. Like Ezra is a black woman, and she stays a black woman whenever she takes the beauty. So like,
it could be just.
I think it's psychological.
Yeah.
To an extent.
Yeah, there could be some aspect. I do wonder, like, how is it? Like, how does the beauty work? Like, physically, how are certain choices made? Like not choices, but like, how do they lead to it? He's like a dark-skinned Hispanic guy, and being fair to Jeremy or the writers, maybe he's just white-complected. Like, I don't know. Like,
maybe he becomes a light-skinned Hispanic.
Light-skinned Hispanic, I guess. I don't know.
I will say,
it's really weird.
In the show, I don't know if you got to this part. So the main guy, Forrest, his two sons, are white before they take the beauty, but then one of them,
Forrest, Byron
Forrest, that's his name.
I was confusing it with the friggin' comics.
Mr. Kutcher.
What was gonna happen
in the show? His two sons take the beauty, and they both start as white guys, but one of them is black after the transformation, and they're like, why did that happen? And Byron Force is like, turns out I'm 5% Nigerian. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So like, there's a chance that if we can like backfill
genetics
that, if we backfill that lore into the comic, that maybe that happened.
So he became a colonizer.
I guess.
So there's definitely different different factors that must be going into how the beauty affects an individual. Genetics, societal beauty standards, like, which is interesting. I don't know. How does that take a?
What I didn't like in the show is that it like literally completely transformed into a completely different
new
person.
body.
Like new everything. It's like
let's save that because let's talk when we talk about the show, because that is a huge part. It just confuses me.
I will bring up though, you mentioned societal stuff real quick. We see that like with the detective, going back to the first arc, you could say argue before the beauty, he's grizzled, but he's conventionally handsome.
Yeah, exactly.
And so when he gets the beauty, what literally happens is he just becomes younger.
It just looks like he gets a shave.
And he's the one that didn't want the beauty. So it kind of goes back to like, beauty standards where like people who are already good looking, what incentive do they have to take the beauty? Meanwhile, someone who might be out of societal norms, much more incentivized to want to catch the beauty, I guess.
I do want to talk about the art style of the comic book, right?
Yeah, it's a big one.
So how did you think the visual style contributes to the tone and tension of the story? Where we see it one way in the first six issues, and then it kind of shifts over to like some watercolors and things like that. What did y'all feel? What did y'all think?
So again,
pop off, King.
First arc, hated it. First like 6 volumes, could not stand it. It was at least like 80% because it commits so many like comic sins that I hate, when it's like, it's not bad. The art style wasn't necessarily inconsistent, but it was so boring and depthless, and all of the speech bubbles were the same, round, like no indication of tone. Paragraphs of information, like just written to just jam as many words into those speech bubbles as possible. It was so boring. So imagine my relief by the time we get to volume 7, and it's like, oh, there are actually characters like breaking like the composition of the panels, and like being like outside of the panels, and like action happening outside the panels. There's interesting text bubbles. People aren't talking our ear off the entire time. And then by the time we get to Ezra's story, it's more of like a watercolor, more of an expressive sort of thing. And I feel like that really anchors into like how her story is about like kind of the expressiveness that she's being allowed via the beauty and via like having a stable job and like having people around her who care about her. And then the last one is just like a pretty good comic style for reasons I don't fully understand on like a symbolic level if they were going for something, but it looked way better than the first bit.
You know? I would say like one thing that might be difficult is within the comic book is to have people. How do you distinguish between someone who has the beauty versus not having the beauty, especially within those first 6 issues?
Yeah.
Because some of the characters just, I don't know, look the same.
Like, I guess if you already are familiar with how someone looked previously, and then all of a sudden they just come in like looking smoother and I guess
like the new
better
like
looking.
The beauty advocate lady, like she looked regular. I don't
like
know.
I guess you could see that, but like if you meet someone brand new and you're just like,
because
you got the beauty or not? I don't know. I can't tell.
You're beautified. But I definitely I do think that I agree. It was a little bit lacking. The first 6 issues, but I also didn't really love the art style of the rest of the comic. I appreciate it because these were different stories that were being told. They were different art styles, you know, so it makes sense. It makes sense. It also gives the opportunity to work with different artists, and pencilers and things like that.
I mean, it did seem like, based on just like the covers and we see like the issues in the comic book, it seemed like there was so much potential for that kind of art style to be incorporated, and it really wasn't. The first arc felt like kind of business casual.
Business casual. Okay, very good. I like that. Yeah, that
100%.
But then like the rest of it, like the watercolor's so pretty, and then like, you know, the other part after like Ezra's watercolor story, those definitely like really picked it up. It was not business casual.
Yeah, I am interested to see where the artwork, the art style and the writing is at for these new issues that are coming out now. I want to save them for them to all come out and read them all at once. But let's get into the show, right? What were your first impressions of the show? Maybe those first few episodes, maybe the first 3?
I really liked it. I'm a fan of Ryan Murphy. I love American Horror Story. And his cast, Evan Peters, Anthony Ramos, Isabella Rossellini. Love all of them. So I was
Bella Hadid?
Bella Hadid for the first episode. So I was really intrigued and I liked the first episode, and I was like, nice. I've been missing that old American Horror Story type of feel, and I feel like that's what it gave me. So I was into it.
One of the first things I noticed, because I am very like locked into visual stuff, is this TV show is shot beautifully. Like, it's very gorgeous. It's not afraid to have like really like a lot of like popping colors and stuff like that. In fact, like it helps a lot of the scenes kind of have like their own visual identity. Like, I think that it's like, I don't watch a lot of TV. I'm sure they've been doing better than lately, but I do remember a time around when the initial comic was coming out, in fact, like where it was very much like this is dark and gritty, and we're not going to let you see anything in any scenes that don't have perfect lighting. Like, like this show has a lot of fun with like its settings and its lightings, and it's just like I think and the costumes as well. Like, I think
for sure.
This show started off with a bang with like that opening with Bella Hadid playing that model who starts like suffering the adverse effects of the beauty and like goes on her like little rampage before she explodes. But like, as a horror fan, there was just something so good about like that kind of gore to start off the show, because she's like all dressed in red and stuff on the runway, and then she immediately, or like almost like at the very end of her little rampage, whenever she finally like succumbs to the disease, she explodes in just like this like pop of red, and it's like it's really impactful.
It's such a gross runway show too, like all the mud everywhere and like the grungy, the grimy.
Yeah.
I think it started off well.
Yeah.
I thought it had a strong start too. Me personally, not enough to like make me invested in the characters themselves. But like Lewis was saying, I mean, that's the Ryan Murphy kind of signature, you know, the elaborate sets, the just colorful, campy outfits. And this show, you could argue it's very campy. It's very campy. Even though it's supposed to be like a dark, gritty story, it almost feels silly. And that's camp. That's the camp thing, you know?
Yeah, it's also it's like a dark comedy in a lot of areas, and I like that.
Again,
honestly.
that Ryan Murphy touch, you know, it's very like it's giving very like almost American Horror Story.
Yeah.
I think a bit too much though, that it tries to almost emulate it.
It's definitely like he's seasoned already at this point. Like he's made shows, he has American Horror Story, he has certain actors and actresses that he likes working with. You know, from the get-go, I would definitely say I wasn't captured by it. The only reason I was introduced to this show was because of the comic book, you know.
And that's a good point you bring up.
Yeah, because I feel like what I'm getting to is, why wasn't Jeremy's name in any of the credits? Especially like in the beginning, or especially where it says like, inspired by, adapted from, you know, like with Wuthering Heights, we saw it like in big letters, adapted or inspired by, whatever.
At least in quotation marks.
You know, it probably has to do with licensing. I definitely would have liked Jeremy and his team to be given their flowers.
Yeah.
And while maybe in the credits after the shows, like it says his name, like very briefly, but I don't think I saw it there either.
Yeah,
I
like,
don't know.
Usually it's traditional at the beginning.
Yeah. If I just came across the show, I would not have known at all that it was based off of a comic book.
Which I don't like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't have gone and searched for the comic book.
Even the gory aspect from what they changed, like of how people die from the beauty. I didn't like that decision. I feel like it makes sense for the time we're in now, because it's all about body horror. We just had The Substance come out maybe 2 years ago or a year ago.
This series gives very much like
it reminded me of The Substance.
Yeah, it was definitely like made for today.
Yeah. I have a point about that a little bit, where I think that this show, so talking about the first 3 episodes, and you had like told me about this going into it and how it like mellows out as it goes along. The use of slang and a little bit more having it be set in our current era, I'm gonna defend it.
Yeah.
I think it was cringeworthy, but
Definitely.
I think that's how people in these kind of circles of like the obsessive sort of like beauty standards and stuff like that, I think this is how a lot of people talk. Maybe not exactly right this moment as recording this, because, you know, TV shows take a long time, and by the time you've written a slang word into the script, it might be completely cringe to say by the time the show comes out. But, like, I think that it still works. I think that, ironically, this show's vibe is not going to age super well, you know? Like, but I don't think that's a problem, because I think that if a show had come out directly after the comic came out, so like we're talking like mid 2010s, I feel like it would have had things to say potentially, but I feel like it could have gotten really bogged down by like a lot of like what we see is kind of like, you know, like old news, cold takes, stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure this is how this show is going to age like 10 years down the line. But like I feel like the way that they adapted this concept into the show for like modern age, I feel like they did it in a way where it feels very like it feels relevant to our time now, especially with the way that Byron Force, the guy who is like distributing the beauty and stuff like that, that sort of like technocrat almost, sort of like move fast and break things, don't care about like just want to innovate at all costs, doesn't matter
they
who
had
it
to throw
hurts.
in like synthetics in there, which doesn't come out in the comic book, at least not because I'm on
That-
issue 18 right now. That didn't come out that doesn't come out at all in the comic books. I'm like, oh, I guess
that I didn't care. But I really like the way that it characterized Byron Force, because it was very much like I think it's tied to right now and our kind of like values of how culturally we see like billionaire types and stuff like that, and like their political impact and their societal impact, versus back in 2015 where like, I mean, I was young, but I was like, I didn't think about billionaires at all, except for like, oh, those guys earned a lot of money, huh?
Yeah.
Like, you know, now it's very like hot button, and you could say that that's like pandering in some ways, but I don't know. I think that it has some poignant things to say about the current era that we live in, and I hope to God that that ages badly too, you know?
Yeah, and I totally get that. That makes complete sense.
Yeah.
I just would have liked to have seen a little bit more homage to the comic book.
Yeah.
But so do y'all think the show captures the same core idea and tone as the comic The Beauty, or does it feel like a different take on the story? What do you think, Ruby, Rosanna?
I feel like it's kind of similar. I mean, it has like the FBI agents. They of course they changed like their relationship with each other and things like that, but I feel like it's kind of similar. I don't know, in the comic books, do they have like the boosters and everything like that as well? I don't think
so.
No, that's all on the show. I mean, we don't know what the second part, what the other issues are going to bring in as well. So I don't know. I feel like maybe it can go that way.
Yeah.
I don't like the how it changed it from like it being an just strictly almost STD to like being something manufactured or illegal, ingestible. I think ideally the STD version of it is much more, there's more consequences.
Yes.
It's consequence driven.
Yes.
Granted, we don't get that much of that consequence in the comic, but it is something that like we've talked about and like, like we think about, especially here in the real world with what we just like, kind of started off this episode with.
Yeah.
And then as far as like the relationship between like the two FBI agents, I liked that they were besties in the comic. And I thought that was great. I did not care much for their, relationship, whether it was,
super unethical.
100%.
Very,
Super unethical.
And I get it. It's probably for the show, for the plot,
Relieve stress. I think that's what Evan Peters' character said.
Like, I just did not like that change. I thought it was dumb. But again, going back to the Anthony Ramos thing, how he was kind of representative of Calaveras. Like, there are some things they did well, some things that I did not care for, and that's just going to be like with almost any adaptation.
Exactly. Yeah. I did like that we saw the transformation.
Yeah.
Like we were
That
able
was
to see that. Because in the comic book, we don't really necessarily see how it, like, they get the beauty and then we see them wake up with
They wake up and then it's just like they look in the mirror and they're like, heck.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. I really, really love the way that the body horror was incorporated in. I'm a fan of that sort of thing. That being said, I'm not going to go back and watch like a lot of these scenes because I was so sick to my stomach. But like in that way where it's like oh, that's gross. Wow, that's really well done. I look at things on the production end very much, and like they do a very, very good job of getting across like the horror of like, oh, this treatment literally replaces all of the cells in your body. What would that look like? What kind of like incubation period would it have? Or like what kind of transformation period would that have? What would that do to you?
Do you know what that feels like?
What?
Do you remember the old Animorphs TV show?
Oh,
I
yeah.
never
Where
watched
they
it.
like
the books. I remember the book covers.
The books and the TV shows. Like the books would mention like when they're transforming into the animals, you hear like the bones crunching, the pain they would go through their body and stuff. Like, oh, that's what it just made me think of when you were saying that.
Yeah. It's. I think that it's the way that it tackles the transformation is super good, especially because it feels more consequential that people are getting it as opposed to people get this. It doesn't like hurt them very badly. They just turn into this in the comic and then eventually they die. Like that part is the horrific part. But this show focuses a lot more on like there is the horror of becoming kind of like just this other version of yourself and the horror of like, oh, why do I like that I turned into this even though I went through something so horribly traumatic to become this?
Yeah.
And that kind of like urge to tell your friends, spread the disease, whatever you do to like encourage others to become like you. I think that it shows the consequences of that from like a really like bio like this really organic messy sort of angle, and I think it's great.
What I didn't like though is that how it was completely different people, like and obviously in the comic book they just enhanced themselves a little bit, but in the show it's literally, I mean, except for the Tony or
Timo.
whatever, Timo. But in the show, like everyone is just completely different looking from themselves, like unrecognizable. That I didn't like. I mean, that would have cost a lot of money for special effects to enhance all those people, so that's
true.
probably why they went that route. But still,
I mean,
Can we also bring up though, real quick? Sorry to interrupt.
no, you're good. You're good.
Ashton Kutcher, the pinnacle
I was gonna say
beauty?
the pinnacle of beauty, Ashton Kutcher.
I mean, he's handsome. He's not.
Nah.
There are some people where I was like, are they really?
Look at my face right here.
Look at my.
Meh.
I mean,
You could be Ashton Kutcher.
Like there's so many people. There's so many people that Ryan Murphy knows that he could have cast as like the pinnacle of beauty.
But after experiencing both versions, the comic book and the show, which one did you enjoy more overall, the comic or the show? Or do you like them both?
Yeah. I like them both. I would be more interested in continuing the other volumes of the comic as opposed to season 2 of the show.
Same.
I liked the show far more than volume 1 of the comic, though. Like, I really, really liked the show, but the direction that it's going does not interest me.
it's kind of going off the rails.
It's going a little off the rails. It's going more into like a let's go on commentary for like cybernetics this time, or like synthetics, you know? And it's like, I don't care. I don't care about this robotics lady. I don't care about the sun. I don't, this is where the interest wanes for me. For the comic, however, I want to see how it keeps exploring different stories set within its own context of the universe that they've created. So I prefer the show over the comic as of right now, but I'm pretty sure that might shift.
I definitely prefer the comic over the show. Towards the end of the show, even the beginning and the end left me unfulfilled. It wasn't only until we started exploring those different stories where I was captivated.
Yeah.
You know? And I did like how a lot of these stories were connected. You know, like we find that the daughter of the FBI director or the boss of Evan Peters, like his daughter, she had like a disease and the beauty helped her to have, you know, to have like just be normal, I guess, for lack of a better term. I liked those types of stories. I like seeing that in the show. But I like the original. I like where the inspiration, I like the comic book.
Yeah.
I think Louis hit it right on the nail for me as well. The comic books, I'll probably be interested in reading how they're going to continue on with the storyline, because the show kind of goes off the rails. I really like the first 10 episodes. The last episode just
Felt
really
very rushed.
Yeah.
Very made me so upset. I did not like the way it left off. Probably won't be interested in seeing season 2. But the first 10 episodes, really enjoyed it. But continuation of the story will probably be the comic book.
Yep.
I would say the comic book for me. The show, again, it had like, you know, kind of a strong start. Like the build-up, it just completely waned. And again, I did not really care for these characters aside from Franny, just because, again, she was just all-encompassing of like her principles. She was very...
Ashton Kutcher. Yeah.
You know, exactly, yeah. And the comic, while like the comic was kind of boring, it didn't live up to like the potential for that first arc, I was still invested in how the story played out. I did not get a payoff on that investment, but like the next few short stories, again, going back to Ezra and her story, I really genuinely did enjoy that. So I would like to continue reading The Beauty just to see if we get more exposition on how things came to be, more background, maybe, you know, it goes back to the first arc and we find out what happens when he leaves off, because it cut off right when he's at the airport. The show, like you said, like you mentioned, I did not finish it all the way through just yet. I'll probably will, just so I can kind of, you know,
wrap it up.
But again, it's not something that I would fully invest my time in.
I mean, Anthony Ramos, though, he was so enjoyable.
He was fun.
He was
He
good
was
the entire way through.
He was probably one of my favorite parts.
Enjoyable.
Yeah. No, that guy is a riot. I love him.
But yeah, that's going to wrap it up for our commentary on both the Beauty comic by Jeremy Haun and the Beauty on FX by Ryan Murphy. With that said, if you want to check out the Beauty comic, head over to cloudLibrary. And if you don't have a library card with us, what are you waiting for? Get the comic book. It'll be easier than getting the Beauty.
Free.
Like,
Get the card.
And safer.
Exactly. Get the card, read the Beauty, and then you can join in on our thoughts.
Yeah, so if you're a Bexar County resident, you can register at one of our 4 locations or at our website, BiblioTech.org. It's one of the first tabs. You just register there, and then you have access to this whole entire world of the Beauty.
Yep.
Boom. And with that said, if you want to come see all of our beautiful faces, you can register in the branch as well. With that, though, we're going to end it here. Thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of BiblioTech On Air. I'm Rosanna.
I'm Lewis.
I'm Israel.
And I'm Ruby.
We'll catch y'all on the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.